The pain was a dull, persistent throb behind my sternum, a familiar companion since the surgery a month ago. 63 years old, newly fragile, I lay in the hospital bed, a landscape of tubes and wires connecting me to machines that beeped and sighed with mechanical indifference. My body, once a dependable vehicle for long walks and garden tending, felt like a borrowed shell, delicate and unreliable. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting a sterile glow on the ceiling tiles, each one a uniform square in an endless grid. I traced their lines with my eyes, a small, pointless exercise to distract from the ache. Then the phone rang, a jarring buzz on the bedside table. It was James, my lawyer. His voice, usually clipped and efficient, carried an unusual tremor. "Francis," he said, "a woman named Clara Davies is suing you. Stalking. A restraining order." My eyes drifted to the window where a sliver of polluted city sky was visible. Stalking. The word felt alien, absurd, clinging to me like lint on an old suit. My world had shrunk to this hospital room, my movements dictated by nurses and IV drips. What was left to lose? I had lost so much already. My wife to cancer 2 years prior, my career to mandatory retirement, my health to the surgeon's knife. This latest indignity felt less like a threat and more like a final, predictable weight settling on a scale already tipped. The first volley of evidence arrived 2 weeks later, delivered by James to my hospital room. Photographs, grainy, poorly lit images of a man standing outside Clara Davies's apartment building. He was tall, with a slight stoop to his shoulders, receding hairline, dressed in a familiar tweed jacket. My tweed jacket. The face was blurred, indistinct, but the overall impression was undeniably me. My stomach coiled. It was a cruel joke. I had been confined to this bed, tethered to my recovery, while a phantom me stalked a woman I had never met. Phone records followed, detailing a barrage of calls to Clara Davies's number, late at night, early in the morning, each call lasting only a few rings before hanging up. A pattern of harassment. The dates overlapped perfectly with my hospitalization. Then came the eyewitness statements. A neighbor who saw me, or someone like me, lingering in the shadows of Clara's building. A doorman who recognized my face, recalling my persistent attempts to gain access. Each account painted a vivid picture of a man I could not possibly be. The psychological horror was insidious, a slow erosion of self. My identity, a lifetime of quiet dignity, was being warped, twisted into the image of a predatory stranger. It was a profound violation, far deeper than any physical pain. To be seen as someone you are not, to have your reality rewritten by unseen hands. It was like watching a grotesque caricature of yourself come to life, performing acts of which you were utterly incapable. I could feel the cold dread settle in my bones, a silent scream against the injustice. James was meticulous. We reviewed the evidence piece by piece in my hospital room, the sterile air thick with unspoken disbelief. The timeline of my hospitalization was irrefutable. Surgical reports, nurses' logs, visitor sign-in sheets. They all placed me firmly within the confines of the hospital, under constant supervision. Yet, the photographs, the phone records, the eyewitnesses spoke a different truth, a manufactured one. The breakthrough came when James pressed for higher resolution photographs. A digital forensics expert, a young woman with a sharp mind and an even sharper eye, meticulously enhanced the images. The details began to emerge. A slight difference in the slope of the nose, a subtle asymmetry around the left eye. Features that, under casual observation, could be dismissed as lighting or angles, but when juxtaposed with my own photographs, the discrepancies became undeniable. This was not me. This was someone who looked strikingly similar, a doppelganger, an uncanny resemblance, but not me. Then came the digital breadcrumbs. The phone number used for the stalking calls traced back to a burner phone. The social media profiles created in my name, mirroring my exact age, profession, even my deceased wife's name. A digital ghost. Walking in my shoes, a fake profile had even posted old photographs of me, doctored with new captions, creating a fabricated narrative of recent sightings. The impersonation was elaborate, deeply unsettling. Someone had gone to great lengths to become me. The question hung heavy in the air. Why? The answer began to surface with the discovery of a defunct online forum, an obscure corner of the internet dedicated to discussing identity theft and impersonation. A user with a handle that loosely translated to Shadow Man had posted extensively, bragging about his ability to mimic individuals, to create convincing doppelgangers for various purposes, often for a fee. He detailed his methods, studying mannerisms, acquiring similar clothing, even altering his appearance with subtle makeup or prosthetic enhancements. James, leveraging his network, contacted a private investigator, a former police detective named Miller, with a reputation for untangling complex digital trails. Miller's investigation led us down a rabbit hole of shell corporations and encrypted communications, eventually pointing to a single individual, a man named Thomas Vance. Vance had a history of involvement in a network of online scams, specializing in identity manipulation and digital deception. His online persona as Shadow Man was a notorious figure in certain corners of the dark web. The pattern of his operations, the specific techniques described in the forum, matched precisely with the evidence against me. The fake social media profiles, the burner phones, the subtle physical alterations to create a convincing likeness. It was all his signature. The stalking of Clara Davies was no random act. It was a paid assignment, a deliberate act of harassment, orchestrated by someone with a vested interest in her discomfort. The confrontation took place in James's office, a high-rise space overlooking the bustling city. The air conditioning hummed, a low, constant drone. Thomas Vance sat across from us, flanked by his own lawyer. He was thinner than I had imagined from the grainy photos, his eyes evasive, darting around the room, settling on everything but my face. James laid out the evidence with calm, methodical precision. The enhanced photographs, the irrefutable proof of two distinct individuals, the phone records linking the burner phone to Vance's known online activities, the IP addresses from the fake social media accounts traced back to his internet service provider, the old forum posts where Shadow Man boasted about his methods, descriptions that perfectly matched the events. Vance's lawyer, a nervous man with a perpetually damp forehead, offered a weak defense. Misidentification. Coincidence. But the weight of the evidence was crushing. James then introduced the subpoena for Vance's financial records. A large payment had been made to Vance's offshore account, dated just days before the stalking began, from an anonymous digital wallet. The source of the payment, James explained, was now being traced, but the timing was damning. Vance remained silent, his gaze fixed on the mahogany table, beads of sweat forming on his upper lip. His lawyer whispered urgently in his ear. The silence in the room stretched, heavy and still, broken only by the hum of the air conditioning. The truth, once elusive, now filled the space, sharp and undeniable. The physical recovery was slow, measured in small victories, each step without a cane, each pain-free night, a testament to resilience. But the deeper wounds, the psychological scars of having my identity hijacked, took longer to heal. The world felt slightly off-kilter now. The lines between truth and fabrication blurred. I found myself scrutinizing faces, questioning intentions, a habit born of betrayal. Months later, I received a call from Sarah, my ex-wife. We had been divorced for 20 years, a quiet, amicable separation that left us with a respectful distance. She had heard about the trial, the strange story of my impersonation. "I'm sorry, Francis," she said, her voice soft. "It must have been terrifying." "It was," I admitted. She paused. "And Clara Davies, I remember her. From the university. You used to mentor her. A brilliant student." The pieces clicked into place. Clara Davies had been a promising history student, fiercely intelligent, but prone to bouts of anxiety. After graduation, she had pursued a career in academia, but her progress had been hampered by a rival, a colleague whose ambition often crossed ethical lines. The pieces of the puzzle assembled themselves with quiet clarity. The rival, a calculated move to destabilize Clara, to ruin her reputation, to force her out. And I, an easily identifiable target due to my recent public surgery. A convenient scapegoat for a scheme of calculated cruelty. The conversation with Sarah was brief, unsentimental. There was no rekindling of old flames, no lingering regrets. Just a shared understanding, a quiet acknowledgement of the complex tapestry of human motives. We both knew the world was rarely simple, and sometimes the most insidious threats came from unexpected places. I ended the call, set the phone down. The late afternoon light slanted through my study window, illuminating dust motes dancing in the air. The old house was quiet around me, filled with the comforting scent of books and polished wood. The world had moved on. Thomas Vance was serving his sentence. Clara Davies, freed from her tormentor, had found peace in a new city, a new academic post. My name was cleared, my reputation restored. I picked up an old photograph from my desk, a faded image of myself, younger, standing in front of a classroom, a chalk dust ghost on my jacket. Truth, I thought, looking at the earnest faces of my former students, does not always prevail quickly. It can be buried, distorted, obscured, but it always leaves a trace, a whisper in the digital ether, a faint scent on the wind. It waits, patient and immutable, for those with the patience to find it and the will to bring it to light. The silence in the room was not empty. It was full of lessons learned and the quiet, enduring strength of a life reclaimed.